Links to everything will be in the description below. So the first step is going to be to go to my scripts folder, right click, create a new folder. I'm going to call this classes. This is going to contain our base ability class. So I'm making a new script here. This is going to be something that every ability inherits from, and it contains all the basic stuff that all abilities have. The things that we need for an ability is we're going to need a couple variables, these guys right here. We've got a protected float ability time. This is for a timer so that we can set our abilities on a cooldown. We've got a protected float ability duration, cooldown, and description. Duration is how long the ability lasts, cooldown is its cooldown, description is just what its description is. All of these are protected. What protected means is that it's just like private, except it's classes that inherit from it can also access it. We may also include some particle effects, which would be these variables right here. These are all going to be particle effects that play when the ability hits something or is cast or when the ability ends. That's our ability script. Our next script we're going to need to make is our arrow script. So when we're shooting, we need to shoot a projectile. In our case, it's going to be an arrow. So let's get the Unity setup done first. The way we're going to do this, we're going to right click, go to create empty, because we want to keep our art and code separate. I'm going to call this a basic arrow. And then this is going to require a rigid body 2D, so we can apply physics to it. I'm going to make sure my gravity scale is set to 0. And then we are going to have to make a script for it. But before we do that, I'm going to create a empty child. I'm going to call this art. I'm going to go over to my add component over here, and I'm going to add a sprite renderer. And then I will select one of my prototyping art assets. I think I'll just go with this green one right here. And then we need to turn this into a prefab. So I'm going to go to my prefabs folder. I'm going to drag my basic arrow down. And then I can delete the one in the scene. Now I'm going to go to my scripts folder, and I'm going to make a new folder for abilities. The reason why we have a whole folder for abilities is we might have many abilities in our game. We could have something as simple as a dash ability. We have our basic arrow attack ability here. We could have alternative attacks. Horizon Zero Dawn, which is a game I'm drawing inspiration from, has a spear option as a melee. We might implement something like that. In here, I'm going to create another folder that's going to be ability items. And this is where our arrow script is going to be. So in that folder, I'm going to create a new C# script. I'm going to call this basic arrow projectile. There's a couple things we need to add in to this script. We need to make it so that this projectile moves, and we need to make it so that it can get destroyed after a certain amount of time. We can also include our damage here. So I've got 3 variables here. We can make these private but serialized. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. Then in our start function, I'm going to want to invoke destroy projectile function, which we still need to make. And this will make it so that after however long our lifetime is set to, we will be destroyed. So let's make that function real quick. It's pretty simple. We can just put it underneath our update right here. And all it's going to call is destroy, and then we're going to feed it ourselves. The next step is to make it so we can move. We need to do this inside of our update. So we're going to use transform.translate. We're going to move in the up direction. So this will just be along the Y arrow. And then our multiplied by our speed, and then time that delta time to make it frame rate independent. The next step is to make it some way that we can detect if we are hitting something. I'm going to use a raycast for this, as this will be the most accurate way to determine if we hit something. The way this is going to work is we're going to shoot a short raycast in front of our projectile. If that raycast hits anything, we're going to say we're close enough for that thing to take damage. The way you do a raycast is pretty straightforward. You require a raycast hit, and then we're going to make a physics 2D raycast call. We're going to feed it where we want to start our raycast from, which is our position, our direction, which is going to be upwards, and then a length. In this case, I'm going to start off with 2. We might change this. 2 is a little bit long. I'll actually change this to 1. And then we say, if we hit anything, we're going to say, hey, we hit something, and then destroy our projectile. Where this debug.log is where we would do damage code. But we haven't done health systems yet, so we don't need to worry about that quite yet. So we're going to save this script. We're going to go to our prefabs folder and attach this script to our arrow. I'm going to keep the damage at 0 because we're not doing anything with it yet. I'm going to set the speed to 10 and the lifetime to 30. We'll just go with those numbers for now. Now, our last step is to make it so that we can actually shoot. And the behavior that I want is I want there to be a line that extends when you hold down the right mouse button that will indicate how much range your bow has. Eventually, there'll be a maximum point where you can't shoot past that range. And when you release the button, the arrow shoots. So in order to draw a line between 2 points, what we can do for this is a line renderer. So I need to add that component to my player. Let's go through this component a little bit. So a line renderer draws a line between 2 points. That is controlled by our positions right here. You can change the color of it and change the width of the line. I'm going to leave it at 1 for now. In order to make it so we can see this line, so let me type in a number here. I'm going to type in 3. You can see that it draws a line from 0, 0 to 0, 3. I'm going to also set the Z to 0 because it's a 2D game. We don't care about our Z's. What I want to happen is when you hold down the right mouse button, this line will grow like this. And then eventually it'll cap out at a maximum range. And then when you release the button, the line disappears and the arrow is fired. And the arrow will travel as far as the line and then disappear. In order to change it so it doesn't have this pink color, we need to go down to our materials property here and we can just select one. I'm going to just choose default line. And then I can change these colors if I want to. So you can see I have a gradient here. And you can see that the line reflects that. So now we need to write our script, which will interact with this in order to get it to behave how we want. So I'm going to go over to my abilities folder in my scripts folder. I'm going to right click, create a C# script. I'm going to call this ability basic arrow attack. I personally like to name all my abilities ability first and then whatever the ability is. The first thing I'm going to add to this file is a requires line. Require component type of line renderer. All this means is that if this script is attached to something without a line renderer, it will create a line renderer. It has to have a line renderer to work. We need a couple points of information. Because we're using that line, we're going to need 2 points. One for the start of the line and one for the end of the line, as well as we need to know what we want to fire. That's our arrow projectile basic. Next things we're going to need to know is how quickly we want our line to grow and a private variable to hold what our shot distance is, or what is the current length of the line. For our bow itself, we need to know our minimum range and our maximum range. These are used for what's the maximum range the line can grow to and where does the line start. We can increase our minimum range if we don't want the player to be able to shoot someone right next to them. Then we're going to have a reference to our line renderer and a bool charging shot that will become true when we are charging our shot. In our start function, we need to get a reference to our line renderer as well as set our start and end width of our line to 0.1. This is just going to make it a very skinny line. In our update function, we need to determine if we are pressing the left mouse button. If we are, we want to do our abilities effect. In our case, that's going to be charging our shot. And then we are going to make our line accurate. So our line set position, all this is doing is actively affecting what these two position parameters are. All right, we're setting our 0 position. So this is our first position, this first one right here. We're setting that equal to our ability fire point position, or where we're shooting from. That's where the line is starting. The second part of our line, where it's ending, is going to be where we're shooting it from, plus our fire point dot up times shot distance. So as shot distance grows, this is going to get further away. The fire point dot up is telling us that we want to go forward from our fire point's location. Next, we want to do our firing. So the way we do our firing is we need to, once we release our button or get mouse button up, we want to do our firing function. So let's first do our charging function. We need to make sure that we turn charging equal to true. Then we need to set shot distance. This is the part that will actually grow it. So we're going to say as long as our shot distance is less than or equal to our maximum shot range, and we are charging our shot, we want to increase our shot distance by our charge speed times time.delta time. So this will make it frame rate independent, and this is going to increase our shot distance by our charge speed. So it'll slowly grow. Then when we want to actually fire, we need to do this. So when we fire, we no longer want to keep shooting. We need to reset our line. So right here, we're just putting the 2 points directly on top of each other, which makes the line effectively vanish. Then we need to instantiate our arrow projectile. We're going to spawn it at our fire point's position and our fire point's rotation. And then we're going to set that equal to a game object called shot arrow. The reason we're doing this is for this part, which we haven't implemented yet in our basic arrow script. What this is this makes it so that when our arrow reaches our maximum range, it gets destroyed. Because the range of our arrows will vary depending on how long you've held down the button. So we need to create these two variables in our basic ability arrow script. Let's do that right now. We need to have a transform for our shot position, and we need to have a float for our shot distance. These two have to be public because this script is accessing it. So these will remain public. Then we just need to, if we have moved too far, destroy ourselves. So we're going to put this right here inside of our update function. We're going to take the distance between our shot origin point, .transform.position. This is where the projectile was spawned, and our current position. And we're going to ask if this is greater or equal to our shot's distance. If it's greater than or equal to, we've reached our maximum range, and we want to destroy our projectile. Then we reset our shot distance to 0. All right. We'll save these scripts, and now we just need to plug it up. So I'm going to add to our player, our ability. We need to give it our projectile, which we have made in our prefabs folder. We need to give it a fire point and a shot point, which we have created right here. These are just children. You can see, let me disable this line render real quick. What you can see are right here. My target point and shot point are currently on the same point exactly. And these are both children of a little triangle I added to my player to indicate which way it is facing in the last video that we did. So we just need to feed those in. The shot point is going to be our fire point. The target point is going to be our target point. Our charge speed, we will go with 2. Our maximum range will go with 10. Our minimum range will go with 1. And then we'll save it. Hit play, and let's test it out. So currently we do not see the line render. That's simply because I disabled it. I'm going to re-enable it. We're going to hit play. You can see it grows out until it reaches our maximum range. And then when you release, the arrow shoots that far. So if I just tap it, the arrow travels very shortly. If I hold it down, we can go to our maximum range. And then it'll fire the entire range. Now, of course, you can adjust all your settings. So it felt like it was charging pretty slow. So I'm going to change it to a charge speed of 15. We'll see what that looks like. The reason why we see the line initially drawn is because I have a manual value typed into there. We can, of course, delete that. This feels a lot more natural. So if you spam click, you only get a very short shot. And this still might be potentially problematic. We might institute a cooldown on our attacking, because you could just, in theory, run at enemies just spamming this and just killing all of them. Or maybe like switch direction. But this is an effective arrow shot ability. I hope you found this interesting. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons. If you have any questions, please comment down below. And I will see you in the next one.